Alexandra Eala walked into the Porsche Arena in Stuttgart as the lower-ranked player, and by every meaningful measure, the most dangerous woman on that court. That's not a narrative, that's the data, and it's exactly why the WTA Tour had no idea what was coming.
Then we got Eala taking on Fernandez. Winner of that match will take on either a qualifier or the number 5 seed Palini in the second round. Then you got Swiatek, the number 3 seed, gets a bye in the first round. Eala's trying to get clay court wins, and Fernandez trying to get some confidence back. I'm going to go with the other in a close 3 sets. I reckon the Fernandez experience is going to shine through, but Eala's just so confident right now, so I'm going to go with her in 3 sets. But let me know in the comments below, who is going to win?
April 2026, the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix, a 500 event on indoor clay inside the Porsche Arena in Stuttgart, Germany. The field includes world number 2 Elena Rybakina and world number 3 Coco Gauff. The prize at stake, 160,000 euros and a Porsche sports car for the winner. And in the draw, for the very first time in professional singles history, Alexandra Eala is set to face Leylah Fernandez, 2 left-handed players, 2 players with shared Filipino blood, 2 players on trajectories that almost nobody had bothered to look at closely enough. Here's what the rankings showed. Fernandez at world number 25, Eala at number 46, 1 number higher, 1 number lower. Case closed, right? Here's what the rankings didn't show. Leylah Fernandez had entered Stuttgart with a 2026 match record of 4 wins and 9 losses, including 2 consecutive defeats to Indonesia's Janice Tien. Alexandra Eala had entered Stuttgart at 14 wins and 8 losses, one of the strongest winning percentages for any player inside the top 50 on the entire tour. The ranking board said Fernandez was the favorite. Every other number in existence said something completely different. But to really understand what happened in Stuttgart, you have to go back to Miami, and a moment that nobody in Philippine tennis history had ever lived before.
Eala's trying to get clay court wins, and Fernandez trying to get some confidence back. I'm going to go with the other in a close 3 sets. I reckon the Fernandez experience is going to shine through, but Eala's just so confident right now, so I'm going to go with her in 3 sets. But let me know in the comments below, who is going to win this one?
March 2025, the Miami Open Alexandra Eala, ranked somewhere in the top 50 but not yet taken seriously by the sports establishment, walks onto the court to face world number 2 Iga Swiatek in the quarterfinals of a WTA 1000 event. First set, Eala uses the humid, slow conditions in Miami to neutralize Swiatek's heavy topspin forehand. Eala takes the set, then Swiatek fires back. The world number 2 takes a commanding lead in the second set, and the narrative basically writes itself. Of course, Swiatek comes back. Of course, the ranking system reasserts itself. Of course, this story ends the way these stories always end. Except Alexandra Eala's entire game was not built on, of course. Trained since her formative years at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain, a program built on clay court heavy topspin, extreme physical conditioning, and a ruthlessly specific mental discipline, Eala had been taught one thing above everything else, point by point, not set by set, not match by match, point by point. And the numbers from that match tell you exactly how that played out. Eala's return game efficiency, the percentage of return points she won, was 64.5%. She was winning nearly 2 out of every 3 points she wasn't even serving against the world number 2. On the biggest stage of her career, Eala won the match. In the post-match interview, when asked what was running through her mind, Alexandra Eala said in Filipino, "Hindi paniwala." I can't believe it. It was the first time a Filipino player had defeated a top 10 opponent in 35 years. Not a decade, 35 years. That's not just a statistic, that's an entire generation of a sport going without something, and then suddenly, violently getting it back. But this is where things shifted, because the same tournament that built Alexandra Eala's legend also showed the cost of reaching it. After defeating Iga Swiatek in Miami, Eala faced Karolina Muchova in the semifinal on world number 13. The final score, 0-6, 2-6. Eala didn't win a single game in the first set. The physical and mental toll of beating the world number 2 had emptied her completely. For most players, that exit would have been the end of the story. For Alexandra Eala, it was the beginning of the accounting. The Miami run launched her year-end 2025 ranking to world number 50, a 108-spot climb in a single year. 108 spots, and even that number doesn't capture what came next. August 2025. The U.S. Open main draw, Eala becomes the first Filipino player in the Open era to win a Grand Slam main draw singles match, defeating 14th seed Clara Towson 6-3, 2-6, 7-6, 11. She had trailed 1-5 in the third set. She saved it in a tiebreak that went all the way to 11 points. And the date of that match? National Heroes Day in the Philippines. It wasn't planned. It wasn't staged. It just happened. And local media used it for exactly what it was: confirmation. Eala had said publicly that she had no blueprint from her own country to follow. Growing up, it was tough, she said, because you didn't have anyone from where you're from to pave the way. She took inspiration from anyone she could find. She built a road that simply didn't exist. And then something happened that no road could have prepared her for. Early 2026, the ASB Classic in Auckland, New Zealand. Alexandra Eala enters as the 4th seed. What followed was described in professional circles as, and this is a direct quote, ___quote, _4, ___. During an Eala match at the Auckland tournament, a referee made decisions that allegedly cost Eala the match. The specific call-by-call details were scarce at first, but the institutional response was not. The referee was banned. In elite professional tennis, referee bans are not routine. They're significant, they're documented, they're the kind of action that signals to an entire tour that something went wrong at a fundamental level. Media framed the aftermath as Eala getting justice. Analysts noted that the scandal cast a shadow over her early 2026 season, but that the shadow had an unintended effect. Eala came out of Auckland with a harder on-court identity, more resilient, more certain. As one media analysis put it, the referee scandal will fade, but Alexa's rise is the headline. And what happened next changed things for the other player in this story. While Eala was navigating a referee scandal, Leylah Fernandez was navigating a different kind of institutional failure, one that left a mark on her 2025 season in ways the tour didn't anticipate. August 2025. Fernandez wins the WTA 500 in Washington, defeating Jessica Pegula and Elena Rybakina back-to-back to lift the trophy. It's a statement win, the kind of performance that reminds the entire tour exactly who Leylah Fernandez is. Less than 48 hours later, she's required to play her opening match at the Canadian Open in Montreal, her home city, her home crowd. Fernandez had been given assurances, promises, in her own word, that she'd receive a night session to allow enough recovery time. Those promises were retracted. Valérie Tetrault, the National Bank Open tournament director in Montreal, admitted publicly, "I didn't win my fight with the WTA Tour to get Fernandez that scheduling slot." And so Leylah Fernandez, physically depleted, walked onto her home court in front of her home crowd and lost to Maya Joint 6-4, 6-1. "I received a lot of promises," Fernandez said afterward. "I didn't win my fight. It was hurtful to play like that before my home crowd." That word, hurtful, carries real weight. This wasn't competitive frustration. This was an athlete who felt let down by the very structures she'd trusted in the city where she was supposed to be celebrated. And by April 2026, when Fernandez arrived in Stuttgart at 4-9 on the year, that Montreal defeat wasn't an outlier anymore. It was the start of a pattern. 2 straight losses to Janice Tien, a sliding record, a season without footing. Across the draw, Alexandra Eala, 14-8, ready. Before Stuttgart, before the rivalry had a match attached to it. There was Hong Kong, October 2025, the Hong Kong Open. Eala and Fernandez are spotted at a players' party, alongside Maya Joint and Victoria Mboko, bonding the way young athletes do when the competitive pressure briefly lifts. Fernandez called Eala an amazing person and super kind, saying their closeness in age made them easy to connect with. That detail matters for a reason the rankings can't capture. Leylah Fernandez's mother, Irene, is Filipino. Fernandez has embraced that connection openly, building a relationship with Filipino fans who now find themselves in the strange position of cheering for two players on opposite sides of the same court. There's also something technically unusual about this rivalry that analysts flagged before a single ball was struck in Stuttgart. Both players are left-handed. Left-handedness shows up in roughly 10% of the population. A first-ever WTA singles meeting between two left-handed players both inside the top 50 is, in the words of the technical report, 11-2 left-handed counterpunchers, one built on the clay philosophy of the Rafa Nadal Academy. One forged on hard courts, willing to step inside the baseline and take tactical risks the moment she senses a lack of depth. Stuttgart's indoor clay favored Eala's defensive range, but Fernandez's aggressive timing could still disrupt everything at any moment. Analysts called it a fascinating tactical duel. That phrase understates what it actually was. Here's the interpretation the mainstream narrative missed entirely. Alexandra Eala is described constantly as the rising star, the underdog, the trailblazer, the player closing the gap. Leylah Fernandez is described constantly as the established veteran, the higher-ranked player, the benchmark everyone else measures against. But when you look at the actual 2026 numbers, not the career totals, not the historical accolades, not the prize money, the picture quietly inverts. Fernandez, with $7.7 million in career earnings to Eala's $1.85 million, entered Stuttgart having won 4 of 13 matches in 2026. That's a 30.7% win rate. That's a player in a crisis she may not have fully registered yet. Eala entered at 14 wins and 8 losses, a 63.6% win rate, for a player ranked 21 spots lower on a surface shaped by the exact academy that built her. Now, Fernandez did carry a stronger breakpoint save rate, 66.1% to Eala's 46.2%. Under pressure at the service line, Fernandez was technically tighter, that mattered, but the broader picture was undeniable. In career terms, Fernandez was the favorite. In 2026 terms, Eala had the form, and by a significant margin. The ranking system said one player was 21 spots better. The calendar said the opposite, and the court in Stuttgart was going to decide which truth actually mattered, and that's where the record goes quiet. The Stuttgart match, the first ever singles encounter between Alexandra Eala and Leylah Fernandez, is documented in its full context. The stakes, the statistics, the tactical setup, the prize money, the surface advantage, even the fact that Eala entered as a late replacement for Paris Olympic champion Qin Wenzheng, who withdrew injured. What isn't documented is the result. Eala once said she took inspiration from anyone she could because no one from the Philippines had ever been where she was going. Fernandez once said it was hurtful to perform below her standard before her home crowd, because she'd been promised something that was taken away. By April 2026, both of them had been shaped by institutional failures, historic breakthroughs, and the specific pressure of carrying a national identity onto a court where that identity is irrelevant, until suddenly it's the only thing that matters. The Porsche Arena in Stuttgart held the answer to a question that had been building since Manila and Montreal, since Miami and Auckland, since a players' party in Hong Kong where two athletes sat together, laughed together, and couldn't yet imagine what the draw would eventually ask of them. So here's the question that remains. When the two left-handed players who were never supposed to meet across a net finally did, who was the real Alexandra Eala and who was the real Leylah Fernandez? And which version of each of them actually showed up in Stuttgart?